Hello everyone, my name is Beckett and welcome back to the channel. And today in Division 2, we're going to be showing you a build, and it's going to be a build that's going to help you deal with hunters. I've had a lot of people ask me how to deal with them, how can I solo them, and they're actually fairly easy. And a lot of times you may be on a higher difficulty than you need to be because honestly we are just going after hunters. We do not care about the loot. A lot of the loot that hunters drop we can get in a regular heroic mission, so it doesn't really matter. We just want those ivory keys, those off-white keys, and those beautiful masks, and I'm going to show you how to do that. And I would highly suggest, if you're ever going after a hunter, just keep it on normal mode so you can just get your mask and get done with it and move on with your day. But before we get started, if you enjoy the content I do, hit that like, that notification bell, leave a comment down in the comment section. It really helps the channel out more than you know. As well, if you do not like to support YouTube, you can find me over at Odyssey, which is a YouTube alternative, which is like YouTube back before 2016, before all the massive sweeping changes. So you can find me there. Links are in the description. Alright, so let's hop into this. So I'm actually going to be showing you guys two different builds, since a lot of you guys going after hunters do not have certain exotics. So the first one I'm going to be showing you is with Lady Death and the Memento, and which is the preferred way of going after them. But if you do not have those exotics, I also have one that is just a full yellow build. You guys can go after hunters, and it is very easy to deal with. You may have to play a little more passively, but generally you're going to be able to deal with these hunters just as quickly, if not quicker, just depending on how you play, how aggressive you are, and how new you are to the game. Now, as for specializations, we will be using the technician just because it's going to give us that extra skill tier, and that's going to give us a tier 5 shield, which is really going to make the difference. Although our skills are going to go down initially, probably for about the 10 or 15 second mark, and then we'll be able to engage the hunter fairly aggressively. Now, if you are just using a Memento and the Lady Death, you're able to rush them fairly easy, and you're going to have no trouble melting a hunter. Now, we also get the Artificer Hive. Now, that's going to be great when our shield comes back online, because sometimes when we're dealing with 2 or 3 or 4 hunters at the same time, having that Artificer kick in is going to nearly top off our shield to full. Let's say it's getting almost to where it's about to break, and we're going to be able to just top it off again and keep pushing that hunter without any trouble. And it's very helpful for many situations, but mostly for dealing with these hunters, because they can hit hard even in normal mode. Alright, so our first build we're going to be showcasing is the exotic version, and it's fairly easy. We're going to be using the Lady Death. Now, if you've never used it, whenever you walk or sprint, you get stacks, and for each stack, your bullets will do 75% amplified damage. Now, those stacks are expended for each bullet you fire, so it lasts for about 1 clip, and if you keep moving, it will stack up again. Pretty easy to use. You're just going to be doing 75% amplified damage for that whole first clip, and usually that will pretty much nuke the hunter. Now, if we get into trouble and we need to switch weapons, we will be using a Vector, and we're going to be using the Vector in the other build as well, having that instinct talent. So whenever we pull out our shield, we're going to be getting that 30% extra weapon damage on any target we hit for the next 5 seconds. Now, with the combination of these two weapons, if the hunter is not dead by both those clips, you pretty much just have to go over there and flick him, and he will fall down, and you can pick up your mask. Now, let's hop over to the gear side. Now, as for our gear, we will be using the Memento, and a great way I like to use this when I'm going after hunters, since we can choose when we want to spawn the hunters. We can go around, kill 30 enemies, get that 30% weapon damage. We're going to have that 30% skill efficiency, which is going to help keep your shield up, which is going to buff your Artificer. As well, we'll have that 3% armor regen, so any hunter going after us is going to have a hard time trying to kill us. Next, we're going to be using 1 piece of Bellstone. We're going to be using a Soak Lob, or you can use the Fenris if you are using a AR, but generally I would stick with a high RPM SMG to really deal with these hunters, because it really just staggers them and takes them out of the fight. We're also going to be using 2 pieces of Golden, so if you are used to a PvP set, a lot of this is going to look familiar, but that's going to give us another 1% armor regen. So when we have all that stacked up, we have 5% armor regen. No hunter is really going to pose a threat. We just have to nuke them down in a timely fashion. Now, for the last piece, I went with the Fox Purge just because it's just so good. It's one of the best knee pads when we come to red core DPS. We're going to get that 8% damage to target out of cover, which beats any brand set bonus you can get. Now, as for the chest piece talent, you can use 2 different talents. It just depends on if you were looking to really nuke them and do more damage, or you feel like you're still a little bit squishy and you kind of want that backup plan so you don't have to go back, wait for another day to deal with the hunter. You can use Obliterate, which I prefer. It just puts out the most amount of damage without being suicidal and using glass cannon. Or you can use that Unbreakable talent, and that's just going to give you an extra 100% armor should it break, should you lose all your armor, and you'll be back in the fight. And pretty much it'll make you unkillable if you are using Unbreakable, but I just went with Obliterate. I just prefer the more damage. It's really not that threatening dealing with the hunter when you have 5% armor regen. Now, as for our stats, we're going to want to make sure we have 4 armor cores, and that's including with the Memento mixed in with that. So it's going to be pretty easy to find that since Golan already rolls as an armor as well as the Bellstone. And then the other pieces, we're just going to want to make sure we have 3 red cores just so we're doing that little bit of extra damage. Not to mention we'll have the Memento stacked up, so it's really not going to be that much trouble. And oftentimes you can deal with the hunter with only like 5 or 10 stacks in your Memento, and you're not really going to notice a huge difference. Now, as for the pure yellow build without any exotics, we are still going to be using the Vector. We're going to make good use out of that. If you have a Vector or any high RPM SMG or AR with InSync, that will be great. You can also use other talents, say Optimist. You can also use Fast Hands so you can get those quick reloads so you can deal with the hunter. I just like InSync. It gives you that free 30% weapon damage and you don't really have to worry. It's there. It's going to nuke the hunter quick. Just depending on what you have in your arsenal at that time. Just really depends on how much you farmed, what shade level you are, what kind of gear you have in your stash. But I prefer to go with the InSync Vector. It just puts out so much damage. Now, for our backpacks, since we will not have the Memento, I went ahead and just added another Sokolov backpack, but you can use a Grupo, you can use something with more sustainability. It just really depends on what you want to play with. If you want to add another armor core, but you're going to want to make sure you have the talent Adrenaline Rush, which is pretty fairly simple. You're within 10 meters, you're going to get 20% bonus armor. All in all, a really great talent that synergizes really well with those close range builds. You're not really going to have any issues dealing with a hunter. Now, the only other thing that I changed in this build from the exotic build was the Fox Pairs. I decided to re-roll the weapon core to an armor core, and since it always rolls with damage to target out of cover, it's fairly easy to find one. Now, if you're having trouble finding one, just go to an Overlord's Armament targeted loot. You can go in the summit, or if it's out in the open world, I'll do that, and you're going to find one fairly quickly, no matter the difficulty you're on, and you're going to have one and just re-roll it to whatever you want, to the armor core, to the weapon core, whether you have those exotics or not. And it's always nice having 2 or 3 pairs of Fox Pairs for just different builds. Now, just to break it down again, you're going to want 4 blues, 3 reds. Ideally, you would be using the Memento with the Lady Death. If you can't, you can use a Vector or any high RPM gun with Adrenaline Rush backpack. As it goes for stats, make sure you're at crit cap. Try to get as close as you can to 60. Right now, I'm at 58, and then just put the rest into critical hit damage, and you should be good to go, and you should have no issue dealing with any hunters in the future. Even on a higher difficulty, this build seems to work very well dealing with them, but honestly, just stick to normal. You're just going after your mask and your keys. Now, with these builds, you should never have trouble dealing with a hunter again, and you're going to be able to open your chest, get your keys, get your mask, and that will be one step closer to being a completionist in this game. Now, if you have any tips or questions, go ahead and leave them down in the comment section. And as always, be civil, and thanks again for watching.